Hello everyone, I'm Ferdi Salvador. Join us in unlocking the tricks of the trade here on Trade Talks. Let's get down to business. For today's episode of The High Life, we take a closer look at new trends among stores in the country. The multi-brand store. A quiet giant, Noble House has been key to bringing some of the globe's most recognizable brands to the Philippines since it started a little under a decade ago. Their knack for recognizing what Filipinos will buy into have broadened their portfolio from homeware brands, fashion giants, and even coffee. Today, with Andrew Naval, the general manager of Noble House, to finally talk about this quiet giant among key players in the Philippine retail world. Welcome to Trade Talks, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ferdi, for having me.
Yes, a key takeaway is a quiet giant.
I know, I like it.
You've been around for a little under a decade, but your impact has been profound in the retail industry.
Oh, thank you.
Number one, how did you keep yourself quiet?
Well, I think it's just very good that we keep the business rolling on its own because it's not really about the people behind it. It's actually about the company. The people behind it are the ones like doing all the maneuvers and everything else. But I think let the company speak for itself on how it's going through all of the challenges and how we further expand despite all the challenges that we're experiencing.
Yeah, there are a lot of giants, in the Philippine retail world that bring in foreign brands and obviously, that foster local brands.
Yeah.
How was it? Was it difficult for you to bring in or even convince other brands to come into the Philippines because you're relatively new compared to the other chain stores or multi-brand stores in the Philippines?
Well, I'd say it's very challenging. Of course, starting a multi-brand concept store, or I would say starting a retail company is very challenging as it is. But I think with the drive that we have amongst like everyone in the team and the partners actually made it work for us to be able to do so. And how we started it is really, you're right. We were able to represent big brands in the country, but the way we really started it is by going, opening multi-brand concept stores. We actually went like different trade fairs. So we do have the Maison Objet in Paris.
Yes, for homeware.
We do have Salone de Mobile in Milan.
Yes.
And of course, Fashion Week. So we actually we knocked on the doors of different brands. There were a lot of like no's, yes, we had to go back, all of these things. But I think those are all part of the journey. I mean, we cannot really say that we always expected the positive outcome to everything, but you just keep on going.
What was the convincing factor that you brought to the table to make sure that you snag the brands?
Well, you're correct. I'd actually put it in this aspect that we are a boutique company. But I think what's very important is we do have a very aligned vision versus the company who would want to represent the brands in the country and with the principals. So I think that alone is very crucial and important, that you do have the same vision on actually opening or expanding in the country, the Philippines.
That's the ironic in a sense because obviously global brands prefer to go with established, operating companies that have been around for 20-something years, right?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that you're boutique. What does that mean? How many brands makes you a boutique brand or boutique company rather?
You mean like how many in terms of like to represent
Yes.
it, right? I mean, you'd say that you do have really like big players in the country which represent really big brands. And in terms of their portfolio, they have really expanded. And the presence in the country has been very great for them. But I think for us, being a boutique company, is we really pinpoint particular brands, and we really pinpoint particular locations and concepts that we bring in. And that makes us very like the boutique
Such
company.
as what?
So, I mean, we do have exception. I'd say we do have several concept stores, but I'd want to highlight exception because it's really a concept store that we built wherein it's not only just fashion brands that we have in. We do have a cafe to represent the coffee brand that we have, which is Malongo. We also have our furniture, novelty, and design brands. We also incorporated experience in that concept store wherein people could actually, it's like a canvas that people can rent it out, play around with the space. You can actually do a lot of different engagements depending on your requirements. But at the same time, we do have our merchandise around you.
Yeah, which is very attractive to a new way of shopping and experience. But we'll talk about experience later. I've got a lot of questions about that for you. During trade talks with people I have a meal with or have a chat with, it seems as though the trend with global brands is how you take care of me to represent me in your region or your market, right? As opposed to, okay, I'm gonna go with the tried and tested with 100 brands, 100 labels, but that's no longer the case. They prefer smaller operators that can give them 100% of their time or attention. Is that your unique selling point?
I would say, honestly, myself and the rest of the partners are actually consumers on its own. So we do have personal touches in what we do.
It seems like you are a consumer.
So, thank you.
From your jacket that I like.
So yeah, basically, I think what makes us very, I'd say, personal is we do know these brands and we do buy these brands. So we get to really put our personal touches. But of course, what's important is we get to marry both the brands and the consumer in the Philippines.
Yes. But what's your... You have to have a knack or an eye to bring in certain brands that even sometimes Filipinos don't know but are global, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What's the formula for Noble House? Like, for example, Balma, exploded in the scene, let's say, if the past, I think pre-pandemic, right?
We actually opened the first store during the pandemic.
Okay, during the pandemic, but of course, negotiations, right?
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
So, meaning to say, you already looked at that and saying, hey, wait a minute, this is going to work for us, right? What's the key takeaway? How do you recognize a brand to make it work?
I think it's very important that we do our due diligence in doing the study or research on what would appeal to the market, right? Yes, that's correct. We do brought in brands that are not quite familiar for a total consumer or like the whole, like the country. I'd say as long as you do have that foundation and knowing like the style, the silhouettes, what are they very much attracted to, it's always nice that we also, in a way, guide through the consumers or clients in introducing new concepts or new brands to them.
It's funny because, during my interviews with all, top players in the industries of fashion and homeware, we don't even talk about price anymore. We talk about what's unique about the brand that Filipinos will essentially consume or purchase, right?
Yeah.
Is that the same with you guys now? You don't look at the price points anymore? It's what people want, what identifies them in a certain social status?
I think it's still very important that we still put into consideration price points. So we do have this, what we call the sweet spots. So price points are very important there. We always have to identify the sweet spots according to the category. So, I mean, in the concept stores that we bring in, when we introduce new brands or new products to the clientele, in their minds, they already know in terms of the average price point when they enter the store itself.
Which puts me which puts this question. Among your brands, what are your sweet spot price point labels?
Well,
am I allowed to ask that? I'm allowed to ask that, but would you answer that? That's a difference.
Well, okay. I think it really differs. It ranges because we do represent different concept stores, different brands. But I think we do cater different consumers. But probably in a multi-brand concept, especially for something similar to ours, like a contemporary concept store, you always have to be in the range of about like 15 to 25,000 pesos, because that's going to be really, something that people would, be willing to purchase. Yes.
There's no what you call it, what I like to call buyer's remorse. Right?
I think it's very important though that when you start building and when you open a concept store, you really understand the target market. Because this is where it actually defines everything else.
Yes.
From products, the price points, all of these things. Because you also have to consider the spending power of the different consumer. That comes also like with the age, the community, all of these things. So you always have to factor it in.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be like all expensive. You always have to balance it out.
But we'll take that point, and we're going to take a short breather. Trade Talks will be right back.
Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb.
The questions,
What did you uncover?
Kita natin yung sa IPO, there was a violation of Section 8 of Republic Act 9511.
the issues,
Is there a problem with that, the present setup of the Syntax?
The reason there's a 5% increase is because of inflation.
we clarify matters.
All these government agencies were actually the lowest. That's why it has to be, I hope that it will be addressed.
Pinky Web is always on point.
Good morning, I'm Mikey Oreta and you're watching Business 360 where we break down the numbers,
This week we saw the S&P 500 make a new historic high.
connect the dots,
They withdrew from the World Health Organization.
and give you the developments and insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Real Corporation is funding artificial intelligence and data science research at the University of the Philippines.
Business 360, hosted by Mikey Oreta,
Keep it here on BNC.
the Bilyonaryo News Channel. At BNC, 12 noon doesn't mean break. We're always ready to give you the latest news, even at noon.
And those are the news this hour. Here at home, the Commission on Elections assures the Public Attorney's Office files new complaints. NGCP assures the public its Chinese investors are no threat.
Join Maya Rodriguez, delivering fresh news for you. Newsfeed at noon.
Keep it here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel.
And we're back. You're still watching Trade Talks here on BNC. Still with us is the General Manager of Noble House, Andrew Naval. So we were just talking about price points earlier.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's the luxury aspect of price points, which can be 50, 100, 200, even millions of pesos. How do you bring in your customers to be loyal to these brands or these concepts?
I think that's a very good question to talk about. I think one of the big realizations of retail companies post-pandemic is how to further engage with the consumers or clients. And that has been the focus of our company. I think it has been a driving force that we're really focusing on, because it's very important that aside from you selling the products, you sell an experience.
Okay.
So we do focus on CDM or CRM engagement.
Which means?
So basically, it's all of these like client-consumer management or relationship management that you do with them. So, you do several events or strategies. I'd say like things that would really entice the clients to, further support and be loyal to the brands. And this could be within the store or even taking them to global scenes like Fashion Week.
Let me talk about that. You're one of the first. You're your business or your umbrella companies are one of the first ones to bring celebrities out, expose them to different shows, which is great because in the Philippines right now there's a lot of big names that support international fashion brands, and it's putting our names on the map, right? What was that strategy? Did you just say, okay, if you support the brand X amount per season, we'll give you this experience, right? Does it equal to returns?
Well, I think let's start from, I wouldn't say we're actually one of the first ones. I would say that I think we were one of the first supporters in making this happen. That's right. We managed to, work with several like celebrities, KOLs, and even down to consumers. And honestly, the whole point of actually doing that is more of them experiencing the brand, not just in the Philippines, but where it actually came from. And I think the return would be just an afterthought. It's just because we want to really give back to our consumers.
So your customer first philosophy is the driving force behind this one. For example, me as a layperson would like to experience something like that. What would it take for you to invite me to a global scene experience?
I think it's very important that we know that there is loyalty from the
that's
clientele.
important, yeah.
And everything else follows from there.
Okay. So that's what it takes.
Yes.
Aside, of course, from purchases. But I'm not going to ask you the numbers.
It's loyalty.
it's loyalty. Okay. How are you growing your brands in the Philippines? Are you expanding to the provinces? How are you reaching out? Because, commerce is just not in the big cities, although it is a concentration. But we've got a lot of Filipino consumers that haves in the provinces, Cebu, Davao, Isabela. There's a lot of them. The haves that can afford your brands. How are you expanding?
I think that's a very good question because you alone also experienced this with me. I think yes, we do have our stores, our physical stores present, right? And you're right, we do have those consumers or clients outside Manila. And what we have started since back then is actually doing different consumer engagements through private selling, trunk shows. We actually bring the brands to them.
Instead of them having to come here.
Yes, I think that's gonna be a good way because not only that you're going to consumers who really know the brand already, but also expanding the reach and introducing the brands.
Yes, based on our research, Noble House actually supports charitable causes, right?
Yes.
I think you had a recent event in the South, in Cebu, for your new brand. I think it's
APM Monaco.
APM Monaco. And, a percentage of that event went to a charity, which is...
Operation Smile.
Operation Smile. Is that part of the experience, or is this the way the company gives back to society?
It is part of the experience, but also we always want to have like I would say, an aspect wherein we also give back, like what you said. So it's also nice to engage these things, but at the same time, yes, we do trunk shows with the idea of course, introducing the brands to them. But at the same time, we also want to have an aspect of, sharing to different foundations, organizations.
Okay, there's a trend happening in the world right now, which is the cooling down of luxury spending. Especially one of the biggest markets is China. So major fashion houses and luxury brands across the board have actually defocused on China. And of course, you can research this, right?
Yeah.
But they're now concentrating on our neighbors in Southeast Asia, namely Thailand. I think Indonesia is a focus as well. Vietnam is coming up in talks. Do you think the Philippines should be part of that focus?
I 100% believe that Philippines would continue to grow in terms of, I would say, the shopping sector.
Right.
And I think based on Wealth Report, you'd actually see that there is stability in terms of the high net worth individuals. And at the same time, you also have the expanding upper middle class. This is because it's driven by, a stable economic sector, thriving businesses, and at the same time, the remittances in the country.
Right.
So the country or Philippines would continue to grow in that sector. And I think there's always that growth for the brands to come in.
Does it excite you that they are no longer concentrating on the former big players, but rather down to the neighbors?
It's very exciting, and I think it's quite evident. As you can see when you go to the malls now, you see like new brands popping up every now and then. So it's very exciting because I think the retail industry is, you can see that it's further growing and expanding.
Well, there's this movement, and this has to be backed up by research and the right data. But there's a lot of talks about the championing of duty-free shopping for foreigners in the Philippines, which I believe the Department of Tourism under Secretary Frasco has been helping push in the Philippines. So, just like in any country, you get a D-tax, right?
Yes, that's right.
How do you think this will impact your business with the other moving parts, importation, operations, and then, de-taxing foreign spending in the Philippines and on the retail aspect?
To be honest, for our company, I speak for our company, we do support, having like D-tax. Because that would really bring in a lot of tourism shopping. And yes, we do have a big chunk of our local consumers who are based here. But I think there's still a lot of opportunities when it comes to tourism shopping. And that would be, would scale up if we do actually offer tax rebates to all of these shoppers.
Because like you're a global trotter. I mean, you would go shop in countries that gives back to you, basically.
Yes.
I mean, this is a great formula that Thailand has institutionalized for a long, long time. I can't, on the top of my head, mention other countries in Southeast Asia where this is a practice, but definitely, well, in Hong Kong, you don't, you don't basically get the regular tax that we have in our country. But that happens in the Middle East and shopping destinations, in Europe especially. But how ready do you think we are to do this kind of infrastructure? Do you think we'll be ready in 2 years?
I think in 2 years we'll be ready.
On the short term, you think?
Well, I think so because, number one, the structures in itself in terms of like having the brands are present.
Yes.
I think in terms of processing it or like doing all of the internal structures and making it possible is doable because like what you said, it's been a practice already in other countries. And I think we do have good relationship with these countries. It's just a matter of us understanding and studying how we can better apply it in the Philippines.
Fantastic. Okay, last few questions for you, Drew.
Yes.
What is your dream collaboration with brands?
Oh, okay. Personally, for fashion, I'd say I'm a big fan of Jacquemus.
Oh, okay. Is that an indication of something?
It's not. It's just I like it personally.
Is it breaking news here?
No, not at all. Number two, because I do love perfumes or fragrances.
Yes.
I really love DS and Durga.
Okay.
And for a concept store brand, I'm such a big fan ever since of Kith.
Kith.
Yes.
All right.
But there are no indications of anything. It's just
really. I was about to jump in and say, guys, I think Andrew Naval has broken the news on trade talks and the high life. Okay, because I'm gonna start trending now.
Oh my God.
Okay, what about other brands that you want to see in the country? Other experiences that you want to see in the country on the retail aspect?
You know what's so nice to actually bring in, considering that we do have already the retail giants like LVMH and Kering being present in the country. I think, there's still so much brands under the portfolio that they can bring in. So for example, like you do have the Loro Piana, which I think everyone is so,
gung-ho over.
Exactly, yeah. You do also have Brunello Cucinelli.
You're talking my language right
So
there.
yeah, I think these brands, there's still so much potential.
And I think the country is ready, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Last question for you, Andrew.
Yes.
What
Ferdi.
is your biggest mistake?
Oh, my biggest mistake is actually, I would say, not being too aggressive on some things. I think there's still so much for me to, do, especially in the career, in the business. So I think one learning I had was to be more aggressive on things.
Interesting. Thank you so much for being
Thank
part
you,
of our
Ferdi,
show
and thank you, everyone.
This morning. We're going to have a little chat after this, but that is it for today's show. I'm Ferdi Salvador. Catch the Bilyonaryo News Channel on Free TV Channel 31 and on cable via Signal Channel 24. Thank you for watching the Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top.